All right, peace and light, family. Listen, I know there's a lot of information going on about water, so we're going to navigate through these seas at this point in time, right? Because everybody has an agenda. They either got some type of really dope, cool video or exposing, quote unquote, exposing, right? All these differences between water. And I got out of that a long time ago because I felt like putting another company's business or whatever down in order to boost yours just wasn't what I was about. We're doing all those pH tests and all those different things. Listen, all water is not created equal. Okay, your body has different filtration systems based on what it needs through diffusion, osmosis, and it's basically about moving, all right, what water carries and the different types of water, right, that is needed for your body, just the same as outside the earth, right, outside your body, I should say. The same goes on within your body, right? You have a certain amount of spring water, you have a certain amount of fresh water, you have a certain amount of salt water inside and outside the cell, right? So you need all these different components, structured water, okay? So this is about filtration in the movement of gases, solids, and other liquids, all right? To which water is a solvent, all right? The universal solvent, right? This is why it's so amazing, all right? So we're gonna get to the basics, all right, and we're gonna start from the basics and build this floor, starting it from ground up, right, ground zeros, right. So we're gonna go right to the elements chart, all right, because no matter how cool the video is, no matter how much music or shot being in the background, you can't go anywhere without the basics information. So let's see what we all got from the basics. So through all the information that's being currently spread about water, I'm gonna say a quote from Socrates. All I know is that I know nothing at all, which sounds pretty strange in the age of information, right? Where everybody is so certain and so sure about everything. But, you know, not so long ago, our parents used to tell us, man, if you think you know something, just live long enough, keep living, right? And even Jay said you'll live long enough to see yourself become the villain, because information changed, times change, things change, right? So before we get into the whole changing of information, let's just go back to the basic components of what we already know, right? So some of the concrete, more so evidence at this point in time. All right, so we know that water is made up of two elements, hydrogen and oxygen, okay? And I know y'all probably won't be able to see this chart, but we'll go back into it, okay? So hydrogen and oxygen are part of the diatomic elements, okay? Diatomic elements mean that they are seen in pairs naturally, all right? So you have O2, all right? There's no O1 forming around the atmosphere, right? It's O2, it's known as O2. Hydrogen is the same, right? So it's H2O, all right? We already know O is 2, so we don't need to say that, but H is times 2, so you literally have 4 hydrogens, all right, to 1 oxygen, all right? So if that makes sense, it'll definitely make more sense as we travel inside the body, where those things start to disassociate, right? Because through light reaction, right, creates a chemical reaction that disassociates water molecules. So if you're familiar with plant structure and chlorophyll, right, chlorophyll literally through the light reaction disassociates water molecules, right? And you'll get the same thing that happens within your skin, right? So this is why we need sunlight, right? Because it'll disassociate those water molecules, right? Based on our melanin, okay? And it'll separate those into hydrogen and oxygen, okay? Going through the electrolysis process literally does the same thing, and I'm gonna touch into that a little bit later, right? But let's see right here, if we can stay on chart. So on this side of the elements chart, right, you have what's called alkaline earth metals. These are metals, all right? So anytime you combine a metal with over here, which are gases, all right? Anytime you connect metal, right? So we have sodium right here, and then we have chlorine found right here. You're gonna get a salt, all right? Or anytime you connect a positive ion with a negative ion, you're going to get salt, okay? So this is what creates salt, okay? And which is why the body needs it, right? One of the reasons why water is so strongly attached to everything within this elemental chart, right, is because it grabs hold of anything based on the environment to which water travels through, right? Then we pump it from the aquifers and those natural springs and we consume it. Now we're made up of every single thing that is on this elements chart, all right? Because we are from the earth, to which we'll go back to. So we have trace elements found within our body, but we don't need a whole lot of those things, right? So understand that some things we're going to need more of. So yeah, we do have, some trace elements of all these different things because we're made up of the earth, all right? But too much of anything makes it bad and toxic to the body, all right? So let's just kind of try to stay on focus. And even I'm going to touch on fluorine too for a minute, right? So this going from the left to the right side or from the right to the left side, depending on how you're looking at it, you get more of an electronegative. So meaning the further you get over here means that it has a stronger affinity to pull electrons, all right? Electrons is what creates the electrical movement for our body, right? So just as if you're an electrician, you know that electrons travel through a certain path, right? Or through a conductor, which literally gives you electricity. Okay, so fluorine has the strongest electronegative element that you can have on the chart, right? Because it is in this far top corner. All right, so the more electronegative you get crossing from this side of the chart to this side, and then the more electronegative you get traveling from the bottom up. So that's why fluoride is such a heavy component of pulling electrons. Okay, so I get a little bit more back into that though, right? Because we talked about hydrogen, and matter of fact, let's go ahead and get into that right now so I can show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so hydrogen right here, right? We can read right here, it says, compounds cannot be broken down by physical change, only by chemical changes. So water cannot be separated, right, by any type of physical change. Physical change, I'm talking about freezing, melting, filtering, or boiling, okay? Any of those, you're still going to get what is called as water, right? You're still going to get that because water is a compound, all right? And then it says right here, a compound is substances made of two or more different elements and chemically combined, all right? So these are things that you've already learned, already know, possibly, through science class and so forth, chemistry, all those different things, all right? So you need an electrical, a chemical process to then separate. So light reaction is a chemical process that plants go through, right, in order to dissociate those water molecules. When you use those alkaline water machines, it literally forces the change, right? That's what electrolysis do. It forces the molecules to separate, which normally wouldn't separate, okay? So electrolysis results in a chemical reaction that separates water molecules into the chemical hydrogen and oxygen. Now, when you start to take a look at and you see how this battery uses to separate these water molecules, right? You have your positive and your negative. And the negative, right? Because hydrogen is created as a H plus, right? Which is a positive, all right, ion. So that positive ion is going to be attracted to the negative terminal part of the battery. And for here, you have oxygen, which is negative, all right? And remember, I said oxygen is on this side, so it's more electronegative, okay? So it's going to pull all the oxygen molecules. So because, remember, I said you're going to have basically 2 to 1 of oxygen gas in this boat. And when you start to fill up, you're going to get more gas on this side, okay? And I get back a little bit into that as well a little bit later, right? But because you're going to get more gas as it starts to fill up, and this is what literally separates those molecules. So what the machine, the alkaline machine is actually doing, is giving you the ability to control the OH. So you'll get OH, which is oxygen and 1 hydrogen atom, or you'll get hydrogen, right, which is positive and acidic. It's a weak acidic. It's a weak acid, I should say, right? So that gives you the determination of how acid or how base your pH is going to be of your water, all right? So it's allowing you to control, all right? And now when I get into the control aspect of knowing about what pH does for the body. pH literally regulates your hormonal balances, okay? So if you look up what pH naturally and actually does for the body, it might regulate the secretion of hormones, okay? So this is why you can be off balance, right? And why your water is one of the main balances, and why you need alkaline water, alkalinity per se, pH, right? Because alkalinity is based on the mineral content, okay? It's based on the mineral content, which gives it the ability to buffer an acidic solution, okay? So alkalinized is basically being charged, right? Because it's going through an electrolysis process, right? And it's being charged. So you have to consume that very quickly, all right, in order to get those benefits. But it doesn't have the ability to buffer the acidity within it, right? Which means to resist the change, right? So now let me go ahead and talk about that really quick as I can get into that, because I want you to understand exactly what I'm gonna get into while I'm talking about that. So in this chart right here, you can see when I talk about resisting an acidic change, once you get inside the inner mitochondria of the cell, so this is a cell wall right here. And once you get inside this mitochondria where all the action potential is actually at, you have a bunch of hydrogen atoms, all right? So remember, I told you based on light reaction, you start to disassociate these molecules, right, of water, all right? And you're going to get a lot of what's called this hydrogen is going to move through this electron transport chain. So it's when hydrogen loses an electron, right, that's where you start to get those hydrogen atoms split up, okay? And now as those electrons start to move through this electron transport chain, you're going to get a bunch of H pluses on the outside, which a lot of people literally deal with the acidity of what they consume based on this inner mitochondria cell, right? Because this right here, as it goes through what's called the Krebs cycle, right, is literally going to turn whatever you consume into ash, and that ash can either be alkaline or acidic, all right? And as these electrons are passed through, it goes through this terminal right here, this pump, which is called a proton pump, all right? And as it pumps these protons, and the amount of, because now we're talking about diffusion, okay? So I want you to look up some of these terminology. Diffusion is basically, or osmosis is basically when a room is crowded, you're gonna look to move into a different room that has space in it, right? So water literally moves in, think of water in that same capacity, right? Or when it's too much solvent, right? My fault. When it's too much solute into an area, or too much water into an area, it's going to look to move to a place of lesser concentration, all right? So, and understanding that, because there's so much heavy concentration of hydrogen ions right here, it's going to look to move through, and they have created has a pump that's going to pump these things back into this area right here, this inner mitochondria, and then it's going to attach itself to oxygen, right? Again, which is going to give you a molecule of water. All right, so I might have jumped a little bit too far and too fast into what I was saying, right? But I want you to understand that there's so much that goes into this water knowledge, right? And you cannot base it off, because the body has its own filtration device within itself, right? So not all water is created equal on the outside of the earth, and as well as in the inside. You have different needs for water consumption within your body as well, right? And the body is good at filtering what it needs and what it doesn't need, because what it doesn't need is going to actually it's going to piss out. You're going to piss it out, or it's going to regulate through your breathing. So the pH of your body is regulated either through your lungs, right, or through your kidneys, right, to help balance that. And, you know, we're going to get more into a lot more of these other things, right? Even, you know, talking about how metals and alkaline metals are good conductors, right? Which is one of the reasons why we need, you know, natural spring water, right? Is because it's a conductor of electricity, right? Which is salt, right? So when you have this, and it says it right here, metals are elements that are shiny, good, thermal, and electrical conductors, okay? So you need this because, you know, on the outside of your cell is more saltier than the inside of your cell, just like the earth. On the outside of the earth, the fresh water is mainly locked up in the inside of the earth, right? But most of the earth on the outside is filled up with salt water. All right, so you understand the electrical strikes, the life that brings, think of Frankenstein, things of that nature. You need that electroconductivity. All right. One of the reasons why I do have a little problem with the alkalinized water is because based on that, you're literally opening up trap doors and within the body that might not necessarily open up. But because you have given it a high pH, it's going to cause systems to malfunction and it's going to throw your pH off, which is why a lot of people end up getting sick and their body have a hard time adjusting to that alkalinized water, right? Because you still have to find that perfect balance, right? In order to basically be able to consume it, and you have to consume it within a certain period of time in order to get the effects of it. But when we start playing around with the body, not through God engineering, but through man's engineering, then we're going to have man problems. So, I'm going to leave that at that, man. This video is already probably 4 minutes too long, man. But peace and love. May the fight for balance continue inside the body and out. It's the alkaline, man. Peace.